Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode number 90. And today's title of this episode is The Majority of People Have No Idea That the Economic Collapse is at Their Front Door. Now, we have seen a lot of things happen. We've seen the market go up. It's been shooting up, and they keep pumping and pumping money into the system that the people are not receiving. The only people that are receiving this, actually I should say the only financial institutions that are receiving this are the banks, and they're putting it back into the market to give the illusion that the market is going up, and they want to keep everyone focused on the stock market, and they want to make sure that everyone's staring at the stock market so they don't see what's going on around in the real economy. And this happened back in the Great Depression, where the economy became disconnected from the stock market. The stock market rose to new heights, and the economy was doing terribly. Now, we saw this again in 2008, where the stock market was rising to new heights and the economy was doing terribly. But there was no news about the economy. There was only news about the stock markets. And this is where everyone kept their focus. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to look elsewhere and not at the stock market. Yes, we'll mention the stock market and we'll mention certain, different things about it. But, if we look at the economic collapse news and what's going on in the world, we see many different things. And like I said in my other episodes, and I continually say this, actions speak louder than words. So when you see things actually going on that are facts, that are substantial, that are real, then we really know what's going on. For instance, 130,000 leave Germany due to failing economy, lack of business opportunities. Now you have to say to yourself, why is this happening? We see this. We see the European nations with unprecedented unemployment numbers coming out, where there are so many people unemployed. We see this coming out, where 130,000 leave Germany due to the failing economy. And this article goes on to say that thousands are emigrating from Germany, one of Europe's strongest economies, to seek opportunities elsewhere, citing no safety for the future and over-complicated business legislation as the reasons behind their decision. So when someone says, and the people say, they do not see a future here and they're going to other countries to find a future, we have big problems. Now in Brazil, we're seeing large protests, and some of the largest protests in decades. And this is the second week that this is going on, and this article goes on to say mass protests continue throughout Brazil on Monday, with hundreds of thousands of demonstrators converging on Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, and the capital of Brasilia. And, protests initially began last week following a government announcement of increase in public transportation costs, which brought out students and young workers that led to more than 250 arrests. And you have to remember, the youth unemployment is one of the highest unemployment now in the world. Here in America, in European nations, in Cyprus, in Greece, we're seeing this everywhere. Now, more interesting news is that European car sales dropped to 20-year low, and Germany clobbered when the S&P, always so conveniently ahead of the curve yesterday, revised its forecast for Europe from growth in the second half of 2013 to 2014. One couldn't help but golf clap, as well as wonder if they finally started looking at the fundamental depressionary reality on the ground instead of the rating agencies' infamous models. A depressionary reality confirmed by the latest car sales numbers for May, which just hit a fresh 20-year low. So when you look at the facts and you look at the news and what's going on around the world, you see that it's not just the stock market. There are other things going on. When people can't afford things, other things happen. Now, we've been talking about bail-ins. We've been talking about how the FDIC and Bank of England created a document back in December 2012 that pretty much structured how the bail-ins are going to work. And then, in March, we see Cyprus as the first test case as they've done the bail-ins. And we see this article that says, "Watch your cash. New bail-in rules will force failed bank losses on investors." And, again, many countries have been changing their laws and changing bank regulations. And some of these countries are Switzerland, Canada, Japan, European nations, England, and the United States, where they're going from the bailout model to the bail-in model. And what basically is the bail-in model? Basically, this is when they take, instead of the government printing money or the government giving them money to bail out these banks, they're actually going to go and freeze your accounts like they did in Cyprus, take a percentage of your money, take another percentage, and give you bank stocks instead, and freeze the rest of your money so you can't take it out. And this is what's going to happen. And this is what's happening, and a lot more people are realizing that this is the financial model that they're going towards. Now, Cyprus bail-in blows up. President urges complete bailout overhaul. Now, again, I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again. When a country does not have income, you can compare this to a person who has $20,000 left in their savings, and you take that money to pay for your bills, and you don't change anything, you run out of money. But guess what? The payments are still there. The bills are still there. So what do you have to do? You have to sell an asset or borrow it from someplace else. So these bail-ins, bailouts will never work. It's impossible, because once you run out of the money, the debt is still there, the payments are still there, but you need to find other sources of money to pay those off. So this will never work. And the president is in effect asking for further Eurozone loans. Of course he is, because they ran out of all the money, all the bail-in money, all whatever money the European nations gave them. And, they're looking for more money. And it's the same thing that happened in Greece. And the only reason America and the European nations aren't seeing this right now, because they're the ones who can continually print money. But that also has a very negative effect over time. And believe me, we will see that. And basically what they want Cyprus, which is a possibility, and this, I'll read this to you, unless Cyprus implements some controls that truly work at the pace, its entire banking system will be completely deposit-free in under 1 year. And it will need to sell much more than all its gold to continue keeping the Troika happy and in compliance with the future, with all the future bailouts. Again, that's why they have not relieved or released the people's money. They kept the capital controls in effect, and they've done this since March. And in the beginning, they said they would only keep these capital controls for 2 weeks or so. Then they said, oh, 1 more week, and that just continually went on. And now there is no releasing the capital controls on the people's money. And basically what's going to happen, all their money is going to disappear. And what I've said in the past is, if you haven't taken some of your money out, or all of it at this point, you probably should, because as the collapse gets closer and closer, you are going to run out of time. There will be a point in time where you run out of time, because you will wake up one morning and one or two things will happen. It will be a banking holiday where they freeze everyone's accounts. This happened many times in the Great Depression, and if you don't understand what I'm talking about, go back to my episodes 6, 7, 8, 9, and I believe in 10, when I compared the Great Depression with what's going on today. And if you don't understand what I'm talking about here, go read the FDIC Bank of England document, and I have that linked up um, on one of my episodes, and you can find it by just going to the search and typing in FDIC Bank of England. Actually, what I'm going to start to do, maybe not tonight, but later on, and I'm sorry that my episodes are much later than they have been. I am on the road right now, and when I get to a wireless place where it's quiet, I do these reports. So that's why they're a little bit later than they normally are. But what I think I'm going to do is create another tab when I get back to my home, um, which will be later this week. I will upload and create a new tab on top that we can view all the documents that have come out, because I keep every single document, and because I like to refer to them and make sure I have them downloaded before they take them off the web or something like that. Now, let's move on here. Billionaires are quietly dumping their American stock. Disappointing performance, and basically what they're doing here is they realize, and this is what billionaires do, they realize that this is all fluff, that the market has been pumped up by easy money, quantitative easing, whatever you like to call it. Basically, it's not real. And they realize this, and they realize that we're coming to the end of the road here. So what happens is, without anyone really knowing this, they start removing and selling their stocks because they know when the crash is coming. This happened in the Great Depression and in 2008. All the billionaires and millionaires removed their money ahead of time when the market was high before the crash, and they're doing this now. And basically what this article goes on to say is they know billionaires are quietly and rapidly dumping millions of shares of stock. And it goes on to say, after the massive crash that rocked the global markets in 2008, as Congress, central bankers, and major financial institutions met in secret to mitigate the crisis, billionaires like Warren Buffett were buying up shares of some of the hardest hit companies. And that's what they do. They get rid of that. They get rid of their stocks at the height. The market crashes, and they buy up these stocks penny on the dollar. And this is how they work. And now, this is how another indicator, which you'll not hear on the mainstream media because they're not going to tell people, and they normally don't tell people that they're starting to sell their stocks because they don't, if people get wind of this, guess what happens? Everyone starts to sell, and they don't want that to happen because they want to get the highest price. That's basically it. Now, Rubini, Bremer, and the Fed policy that's going to implode. Basically, Rubini and Bremer came out that said, be sure you fasten your seatbelt because nothing has really come to rest. We have entered the new abnormal, a period in which every market assumption must be questioned, and the wise investor is prepared to be surprised. So here we have billionaires removing selling their stock because they know the market's at its height and they can get top dollar. And then we have Rubini, Bremer, and these are the people that also said that before 2008, the market was going to crash. And they're basically coming out saying, that this whole thing is about to go and implode on itself. Okay, let's move on. Now, this is very interesting. There was an article in Zero Hedge that said, Deja Lu all over again. And let me just read you, and this is basically something the Fed said, and it sounds very familiar to what they're saying today. The Federal Reserve appears on track to buy the entire government debt it has committed to purchase, barring a sharp, unexpected shift in the economy's prospects. If anything, lingering weakness and renewed concerns about global credit markets may lead top officials to lean toward doing more rather than less. Policymakers would not likely have committed to a significant upfront figure if they saw the possibility that they would need to change course shortly thereafter. Instead, officials view the move much like traditional interest rate cuts, which are really taken back so rapidly. A recent batch of better-than-expected economic data, including a relatively upbeat reading on the job market, has raised questions about whether the Fed acted prematurely in pulling the trigger. The Treasury market has been selling off sharply, in part as a response to the somewhat brighter landscape. And what's funny is this is I call this management babble or financial babble. And when they said this was back in 2010, and it sounds like it fits in perfectly for today because they continually say the same things. They really never say anything. It's all doublespeak. That's what they do. Now, in Turkey, I know that the government has been forcing the people out of the square, but you have to remember, this is a real basic, basically, I guess, revolution or uprising or whatever you want to call it. And when people are uprising and they're unhappy, you just can't stop it. It just doesn't stop. It continues. And this is why you see this happening. And the standing man protest goes viral as this man was standing and people started standing with him. And basically the Turkish government is working on a draft law to restrict social media in a bid to crack down on activists. And basically, a new form of protest is sweeping Turkey, taking Twitter by storm under hashtag Standing Man. And basically, the government is trying to censor social media and not have this broadcast on social media. But then again, it is very, very difficult to stop people from broadcasting. And this is a definite sign that they're trying to minimize and black out what people are saying or people are doing, so nobody sees any of this. And the article goes on to say, we have a study on those who provoke the public via manipulation with false news and lead them to actions that would threaten the security of life and property by using Twitter, Facebook, or other tools of social media, adding that citizens must not allow to carry out a witch hunt over Twitter. And of course the government is saying this, and the government also goes on to say those people who are doing this are terrorists of the country, and they should cease and stop doing this. And what happens when you have an uprising? People don't listen to the government because they want the government out. And basically the government says, that we've adopted a zero-tolerance attitude towards protests, decrying them as illegal and driven by terrorists. I mean, that's word for word what it says. And I hate to say this, when people are unhappy and they rise up and they want their leaders removed, they do not stop until they're removed. And a lot of times, and most of the time, the governments don't see it. And they push back harder, then the people push back harder, and you have a complete breakdown, and you have a revolution. And this is how these things start. Now, let's move on here. Obama fails to sway Putin on Syria. Now, Obama met with Putin, and he's trying to convince him to basically not back Syria, and he doesn't want Russia to get involved. If the U.S. and Israel invade Syria, then invade Iran. And Putin knows exactly what's going on. He knows that this is an act by the government and the central bankers and the Fed to basically switch everything in Syria back to the U.S. reserve dollar, to replace Assad with a puppet regime to put in place so they can set up a central bank. And since Iran and Syria have a pact, Iran backs up Syria, and they're hoping that Iran comes to Syria's rescue, and the U.S. and Israel can move into Syria, then into Iran, and pretty much do the same thing in Iran. But the problem has always been Russia standing in the way. And I think it's Obama making his last-ditch effort to plead with Putin to not come to Syria's rescue or Iran's rescue. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen. And if there is an invasion by Israel or the U.S., Russia is going to definitely back them up, and World War III is going to happen. And in the background of all this, the central bankers, the ones who print the money, who make fortunes off of war, that have no loyalty to any country whatsoever, can't wait for World War III because this will cover up the whole entire economic collapse, which they know is coming, and they can blame it on the war. They can blame it on another country. They can blame everything someplace else, and at the same time, loan money to the governments at interest to make even more money. And they don't care if both countries destroy themselves. They'll supply money and arms and everything they can get their hands on to both sides. They don't care. It happened in World War II. I mean, Standard Oil was supplying all the oil to the Germans. Go look it up. This basically, it doesn't matter. They want this to happen. Okay, let's move on here. Now, basically, Syria's Assad warns Europe to pay. They're going to pay the price for arming the rebels, and he goes on to say, Assad has warned that Europe will pay the price if it arms the rebellion against his regime. And in an interview with a German newspaper, he said that arming the insurgents would strengthen terrorism in Europe's backyard and lead to chaos and poverty in Syria. And basically, Assad knows what's going on here. He realizes that there's only one reason they're in his country. He realizes that the rebels are not Syrian, they're paid mercenaries, and he realizes what's going on, and he's just letting everyone know that he completely knows. Now here's a flashback going back to January 2013. And I put this article up on the site here. U.S.-backed plan to launch chemical weapon attack on Syria. Blame it on Assad government. Now, back in January 2013, basically President Obama was, this is what he said. Let me just read this here to you. And this was in London. I believe this was Yahoo News. The Obama administration gave green signal to a chemical weapon attack plan in Syria that could be blamed on President Assad's regime and in turn spur international military action in the devastated country. And this was known because of leaked documents. And this is why they know this. And again, I've always said this. Actions speak louder than words. If he was going to do this back in January, do you think anything has changed? Basically, they've done the same thing. Again, this was not a news report in America. This was a news report in London. So Americans really haven't seen this. And they were going to do this because of leaked documents, and it showed this was their plan. And basically, instead of January, they just carried it out in June and May, whenever the date was. And put it this way. If the president, the U.S. government, can do this, do you really think he cares about the Newtown shootings? Do you really think he cares about the drone attacks? Do you really think he cares about Americans? Why do you think DHS has been put in place? Not by Obama, but by Bush. But it doesn't matter who's in power, because the power is really not the president. They are the They are the puppets being controlled by the puppet masters. So they are listening to the real masters, and those masters are the central banks. And it's the central bankers are the Rothschilds and many others that make up the organization, and they have no allegiance to any country. So when Obama is pleading and making his case, just go back and look at the actions of what he is doing. Because whatever he's saying does not match what he is doing. Now, the NSA is trying to make the case that they foiled a lot of different terrorist plots, and basically, here it's all coming out. And, personally, who could believe them? They lied that they were spying on the American people when asked. They violated the Constitution, the Fourth Amendment, and they pretty much lied under oath. They all took oaths to defend the Constitution and support the Constitution. So basically, what they're putting out now is a bunch of bullshit. They're just coming up with this to save face. And I mean, I could say I stopped terrorist attacks in Chicago. I mean, we'll just make something up. It's meaningless because this spying on Americans does not work. And if you want to go back, you go back to our founding fathers and you look at the things that they have said, and you see that giving up security for liberty is not the way to go. And they know better because they're the ones who fought, bled, and lost people they knew in this battle to give us what we have here today. Okay, let's move on here. Now, Biden to announce progress on guns executive actions. Now, basically, he's saying that gun control talks have progressed since April, but Vice President Joe Biden on Tuesday will announce a progress report that finds the administration has completed or made significant progress of 21 of 23 executive actions that President Obama announced in January. And basically, to finish this off, and what they're planning on, because they're hoping to have these gun bills and everything passed, which he said in previous interviews, in August. So they're waiting for the main event. July 4th, we are having Kokesh first called a march on Washington with loaded weapons. Then he canceled that, but he's continually saying that all gun owners should march on all their individual state capitals with or without loaded guns. Doug Hagman, his DH insider, has said that that something is going to go down around July 4th, the 5th, 6th, 7th, that we're going to see things happen in all different cities at different times, and martial law will be declared. And this march on all the capitals kind of fits into everything, so we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. Now, let's move on here. Like I said yesterday, we are going to see a cyber attack drill. It's a Quantum Drill 2, which is taking place on June 28th, which is a Friday, which is very interesting that they're doing this on the Friday, because in my previous episodes, I mentioned that if there was going to be a cyber attack, it would happen on a Friday, which will allow them. Now, will this be the main event cyber attack? I don't think so. But could this be a cyber attack where banks go on a bank holiday, and during the drill, where everyone is confused, a real cyber attack comes in? This is a possibility, because every time there's a drill, 9/11 there was a drill, Boston there was a drill, and now we're hearing this other drill, and there's also more potential false flags. If you look at the X22report.com site on the right-hand side, you'll see all the potential false flags that I have up. But usually on a Friday, and this happened in Cyprus, where the banks will go on a bank holiday, and they will freeze everyone and close them out of the banks, and you'll not be able to access your money. Now, during this cyber attack, it is a perfect confusion time, because they won't know if this is a drill or a real cyber attack. Now, will this happen? We don't know. We have to see. We're making a lot of assumptions, but everything just seems to fit at this point, and we might see something, because CISPA is pending in the Senate, and CISPA would be passed if this was hit and the cyber attack actually happened. Now, there was a survey that says that companies aren't prepared for cyber attacks. Basically, 2/3 or 68% said that they are unprepared for any type of major cyber attack on banks. And basically, this report goes on to say cybersecurity must continue to be a major focus for businesses, especially in the light of recent high-profile security breaches. And you can see that these companies and what they're putting out here is they're telling us that something is coming, and the United States government, the NSA, I should say, already has the ability to do cyber attacks, and they've been doing it on Iran, shutting down their nuclear plants with Stuxnet and hitting other things. And back when I think it was like 3 or 4 episodes ago, basically General Alexander said, from my experience, I believe the U.S. is, out of a scale of 1 to 10, we are a 3, and we are not ready from my experience, because his experience is he's done cyber attacks on other countries. So he realizes what they're capable of because he knows, because he's done them. Now, again, when I say a cyber attack, and the cyber attack is going to be a main event. And for those people who are new and those people who have been listening to me, this main event is going to basically shut down the power grid, shut down the water supply. And we've had many, many reports. Hagel, DHS, come out and say that if we do get hit with this cyber attack, power will be knocked out for weeks on end. And this, to me, is a perfect storm, a last-ditch effort where they can knock the power out, declare martial law. And again, if all the other things don't work, this is something they can use, because if they can't get the guns confiscated, the gun bills passed, the UN Arms Treaty passed, these are all pending in the Senate at this point, they can use this cyber attack to declare martial law, and for your safety, we can take your guns away. At the same time, your money will be siphoned off from the banks, and they'll blame it on another country when the power comes on, or when the power's off. You'll hear reports saying that China's done this, or Iran has done this, or whoever they want to blame it on at this point. And basically, people are going to sick, people are going to die, because they are not prepared for this. And when I say prepared, yes, gold and silver is important when the entire economy collapses. But during this period, make sure you have food, water, medical supplies, weapons, and things like that, because you want to be protected during this period. And this is why you need to go out now and do this, because we are getting closer and closer to the end game. And if you are not prepared, it's not going to be good. Because just think about your neighbors. If you have all this food and water and they have nothing, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days go by, how do you think they are going to react? They're going to need to feed their family. They're going to be scared, and they're going to basically break into the supermarket, break into other homes, looking for what they need. And if you don't believe me, I know for a fact, because my children, their school they went to, people have broken into the school, stole laptops, and left a note saying, "I'm sorry, I have to do this, but we have no money to feed our family." And you know that they don't want to do this, but people become desperate. And this is why you need weapons, food, water, so you can protect your family. Or if you have enough food and water, help others. Help others get through this, but make sure that you have enough to survive. Now, moving on here, just the last one piece of news. Obama hints that Bernanke is on the way out. President Barack Obama has proclaimed that the Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke stayed in his post longer than he should have, which has raised speculation that the bank chief may soon be on his way out. Basically, I think he's jumping ship because he knows what's coming. He doesn't want to be around when this happens, and basically because he always said he was leaving by 2015. So he knows what's happening, and I notice before things go south, people leave, like Hillary Clinton. Like every other person, when things go south, people leave their posts because they get prepared and get away from the whole situation. And this is another sign that things are going south quickly. And we can see from the actions of billionaires, we can see the actions from the president, from the government, and everything else that they're doing. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you very much for listening. I want to thank everyone for commenting. I want to thank everyone for donating to the site to keep it going and supporting. And I'm trying to make this a place where people can come and hear what's really going on. And I look at things hopefully a little bit differently than the mainstream media and from other people, and bring you things that are current and things that are helping you understand what is happening and how soon things will be happening. Again, thank you very much, everyone. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thank you.